for illumined life to be birthed into form. I am the truth. I am the light. Illumine, beloved divine.
So hello there everyone, and welcome to this video with me here today, again after quite a while. So as you know, my practice was for many years, around almost 10 years now, to record videos very frequently, and since the last 3 months I've been quite absent, and especially in the last month and a half I wasn't recording at all because my life took me on a more private personal mission, which we somehow received a name for, the journeying of the Christ, like the walk in Christ. It was quite a circle that we had to make. So there's so much to share, and I want to start off by saying that perhaps in the first video here to come and be online will be more about my experience after late, and then we will move and progress towards, as you know, the topics I like to talk about as how our current mission of the Christ is on this planet at this time, with all the benefits, the challenges, and whatnot, right? So in this last month and a half, we stayed temporarily somewhere with these quite nice people here in remote hills, in this hill area, and I only had basic Wi-Fi, but I didn't have a good internet enough to upload my videos. So it was a more private matter, and I wasn't feeling into recording at all, you know, despite the fact that, you know, it was about the internet as well. But it was an interesting time, and I was pulled back from basically everything, because during this time that we actually walked through a very challenging journey, and was about seeking a meaning of home, what home is. Because as you know, in the last episode I kind of uprooted myself from my previous long-standing home, which wasn't just my home, but as a creation pillar, our mission is to create or co-create with this very specific locations. And there was this portal there, you know, and just recently, I'll walk you through, I had to close my work there, and it was so painful for me. So this was also, besides seeking a home, seeking a temporary space before a new place calls me out, and not really knowing what's next. It was a lot of grieving, because, you know, when you take your first leave of absence, you don't even know, right? You go through all the grieving stages, because for me, this was a wholesome relationship. It was a relating experience, just like people relate with other people. For me, my, most beneficial relationships were with places, spirit of the land, the elven spirits there, with ancestral spirits there, spirits of the place, and nature elementals and nature spirits. So I'll walk you through many of the experiences in the times to come. This is just an introduction video, because I've been through a lot. You know, my journey is kind of like, if I think of the month and a half, how much is packed in there, it's a whole lot more than what most people experience with their mundane day-to-day lives, because I live a life of inner abundance. This perhaps for me wasn't a time of so much external abundance as per usual, but it was very different in the way abundance was experienced. So when I look back now, because today is my day when I say goodbye to this place for now, and it's like it was a temporary space of refuge for me. But still, you know, even with changes being most wanted and desired, there's still an element of not wanting to go, because we always settle ourselves somewhere. There's an element of us, and especially in my kind of mission, in my kind of walking through life, it's like a part of me stays there. So it was very difficult for me to accept, because once we ended up here, I realized it's not the same nature, it's not the same place, right? I had to go through a lot of the grieving stages of basically uprooting myself. And I realized towards the last stages of this journey that we've first and foremost, right, we had to be humble in a human sense for a while. We had to meet certain people. We had to see how the Christ acts in a physical day-to-day life, walking through this journey, meeting people, because before, you know, in the 7 years of living there in the Alpine region, I was very absent from life in the way most people engage with it. So it was more of a hermit-like life. And our spirit told me, no more hermit. It's now just going to be a 50-50 kind of integrated living or life experience with moments of hermitage that are always needed for the Christ path, but it's different. So for me, although this was a much desired change, it was a part of me that didn't want to let go. And because I couldn't fully let go, right, I couldn't manifest a certain something, and I wanted to do it already in the summer or even before the summer, but it wasn't possible. So one night I had a dream, and in the dream I was told it's going to be in September. And there was a part of me that was like, oh no, not in September, right? It's already my birth month then and all that. I wanted to be before, right? I wanted to be sooner. I want to be settled in, and I was craving all these 3 months to be settled in, and yet I was uprooted. I was like a vagabond spirit, just going through different notions of life and experiences, and talking to people a lot and meeting people before, you know, wasn't that much of an experience. So I was sort of like taking my Christ life out, and I was uprooting it, right? So being humble, right? The first step. I remember when we first came to these people who gave us our third temporary home. So we moved in 1 month, as you know, 3 times. And we came to them, and they took us in, although it was a very small place, and it's, as you know, here in this remote area. It was beautiful, right? It was also very loud because there was no good isolation, or how to call it, soundproofing, right? Wasn't really a part of the experience, so it was very noisy. I didn't sleep for months. I'm sleep deprived, and I'm very tired. I've started having immense pressures and in my back and my jaw and my teeth, as I've already told you, this chronic pain, which I'll also talk about in the next video. But today I just want to focus on this journey, innocence of Christ, right? When it's being uprooted in a way, and what this means. So for me, it was like everything I knew, everything I lived before in my isolation, I had to master and practice to live it in a space of being wobbly, being uprooted, living in a wobbly kind of environment, and just being shaken off the ground. And it's kind of like living off the ground, literally, and not having my things and my security and my space, and not being able to do my things. So all I did was take these daily trips, right? Being called to certain spaces. So one day we're there by this waterfall, and I get a message that I need to be here in these lands. That was my first partial brooding in this space, because I was so resisting it. I didn't want to be here for the first month. It's like, I just don't want to be here. Why am I here? And I was resisting it for a very long time. Then I started letting go, and I accepted it, and then experiences got better and better. It was still difficult, still challenging, because the heart knew I don't have a home, and it was kind of acting out, right? And the mind was getting, as you know, berserk. And so what happened was, that message by the waterfall was my first sacred space experience, when I had to see the energy there. They were showing me that I need to come here because a lot of nature and a lot of trees are dying here. And they were telling me that the place is calling me now, that the work where I used to be before is complete, it's finished. Because the primary work that we have as creation pillars, we work with the spirit of the place, and we build portals there. So when I came there, the portal wasn't just there. That's what they were telling me. They said we co-create these portals. So the Elohim family of light and the rest of the spiritual hierarchies that are kind of assigned to do these things, right? They're kind of assisting this path, and they're working through me. So it's not like me, I do. It's not an egoic thing. It's not an isolated mission. But when you walk through in this human journey, you feel rather isolated. So there was this stress of being uprooted. Then what's next? What is this even about? Trying to figure it out. Not always getting the messages, right? Being still attacked and bombarded by the dark forces as always. And it's very hard to break through. And I'm going to talk about this in the next video segment. But for the first part of it was just trying to survive, and then I fell into the survival consciousness, and then I had to feel how it is when the Christ breaks through, because like I said, we're going to walk through this in the next video, because the Christ needs to master on earth that with its essence. Now, you don't just have an essence, you have to use and utilize this essence of Christ in everyday situations. So, for example, I met so many people now, and they've all had their stories, and they're all still suffering, whether they have physical pain or, any kind of anxiety. and the way their lives are driven, and the way they think they need to do these things and they don't even need to do them, and they're so stressed because of it. And my own physical pain taught me this state of compassion when I understood how difficult it is to just be a normal human when your body doesn't allow you anymore. And I thought at a certain point, it got so bad, I thought I'm really going to end up in a wheelchair. I'm no longer going to be able to walk, because this painful experience and the trauma I've experienced from being actually exiled from my space, partially, but at the same time it also ended. And it was very painful. So I realized it's a different kind of intermediary space of learning. There's a part of training. It's not going to be like this forever. It's temporary, and it's very difficult, because like I said, within yourself you don't have a stable home, and you build up this pressure, and this pressure can come out as a disease or any kind of ailment and can be very difficult. Then at the same time, before I didn't have to deal so much with people and their pressures and their anxieties, now I was involved with a lot of people and feeling their stresses and their environments and their difficulties and their life challenges. And it was getting very difficult for me to navigate. And still, I knew I need to have a breakthrough. So this will be in the next video. But I remember, as I started this topic earlier, when we first came to these people, we kind of really felt this vibe between us. And they're not the kind of people that just take anyone in, right? Because we were just here. And the previous place was very dark, and they actually stole our money, some of it. It was very difficult, and I realized there's nothing I can do physically, but then I realized that experience had to happen, because here is very remote. We actually had to get to that place to then get to these people, because we were kind of meant to meet them. It was very interesting, the stories unfolding, right? So when we came here the first day, we started talking and having coffee and doing some oracles and just having these talks, right, about how we perceive reality. We started laughing because we started turning over the coffee cups, right? It was like, what the heck is this? Are you serious, right? So it was interesting, because the woman who was very psychic there at the house, she told me, she said that I'm very much the fool archetype, like the embodiment, the representation of that fool, which is like you play out like this innocence, I call it the innocence of Christ, which is basically an essence of you not being that kind of like a smart know-it-all persona. So even though you have the wisdom, and when people start talking to you and giving you their impressions of reality, you don't say, no, you're not right. This is how it is. Let me tell you about it, because I'm spiritual and you're not, that's kind of ego we meet in the New Age very often. And it's very dogmatic, and you get very kind of like hierarchical, right? And, people tell me these things like, what if I'm more advanced than you? What the heck, I'm very much against that kind of language, because it puts separation on us. But I'm very much about individualism, because in our sovereign God state individuality, we're truly whole as a unique God essence. And we're all these sparks of a divine Godhead as our own unique I am presence, reflecting through our soul being, and then also reflecting in our personality type. So a lot of people are still in that we, the volunteers, we, those. It's like, when I went through this kind of harsh experience, it taught me a lot of things, because at the same time, being in this remote space, it brought me back to that state of innocence before I had a lot of this work, right? I do these videos, I do this Patreon work, and I started noticing now there's still pressure in me as well. Like, I need to deliver if people think that this is serious, that I'm serious, that I know what I'm talking about. And being in these hills just reminded me again of my human personality, which just likes to be in nature and pick mushrooms and nature goodies and observe things and be with animals and love animals and exchange love with people and love people and talk to people and give people my healing abilities and practice these healing abilities. So it was a lot of this demand that needed to leave, which can cause, control. And so this brought me back to that innocence, and I realized that I was always like this, right? The fool. Because when people start talking to me, I don't approach them in a way like I know more, because look, I do this kind of work, so trust me, I know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? I just don't talk to people like this. I listen to them from their perspective. I go to their level. I can absorb myself into the experience. It's like being a chameleon. And I was always like this state of the Christ. So when I shared on Instagram my experiences, a lot of people gave me these comments. Some of them were just, I know people mean good, they mean well, but some can get very snarky or smarty pants like. And people start telling you, oh yeah, you know, what if you have this to learn, and what if this is experience, you know? And this is what I'm talking about. This is the Christ, our essence, this innocence of the inner Christ child within us does not have that, does not even know that. It's kind of like irrelative. It doesn't even exist in that realm. It's like you are crowned within such purity. You live and exist in your throne of this sovereignty, but at the same time, the sovereignty meets this innocence. And this fool looks at the world always with innocent, bright eyes, which I had to myself unconceive of, right? The before, what was before conceived, and my identity and the way I deliver information for people that, you know, they absorb in a certain way. And it was just like, no, I simply am the embodiment of this Christ. My purity is reflected in simply just my being, my presence, when I sit with someone, when I have compassion for the experience, when I listen to them. And this goes for people, nature, and animals. All walks of life, all presences, right? So now in the New Age, as you know, there's more focus on information, because information is more material. You might say, well, information is not material, but still it is, because a lot of information now is focused around people needing to discuss and debate a lot of these things and issues of the collective, which does not really reflect the nature of Christ, which is so prime. It's so primeval, primordial in its nature, in its essence, that it does not need to know every situation and every bit of the collective and every experience. So one of the aspects that Spirit pushed me through was getting rid of all the external influences. And it showed me certain teachers or people that I've also had respect for. But I realized, just like being, like no longer having this veil of, you know, because one thing is respect and the other is this admiration, and it's not always reflected in its purity. And we have a lot of projection. We all can have that experience. So I realized Spirit just wants to get me in my state of Christ innocence. And it was one of the things I was trained for here during this 3 months, besides a lot of other things, because, you know, I exist in many levels, galactically and, you know, just humanly. So what happened was I was witnessing how much still this spiritual access energy, this constant debating and arguing and presenting these video workshops, and people having these opinions and what's happening, and, you know, and calling themselves spiritual. And it's like being of spirit, which is the essence of Holy Spirit that lives and dwells within all of us. And our inner child, our Christ child, our Christ golden essence is intact, does not actually include or involve any of these things. And so when you enter into this state, it's truly the purity that, you know, we already had as children. And I was most of my life like this, but the external pressure sometimes kicks in from the world, and then I fall prey to it as well. So I had to declutter, be debunkered, right? And I've seen like how much I'm actually repelled to watch these videos. And even from people who are very known teachers, or people who I once really had respect for, and people I even included and talked about in my own videos, because I had real respect for their work. But then Spirit showed me that work is not Christ yet, because it's not as absolute to just work through the essence, because it still involves worrying over what will happen in the collective. And it's the kind of ego consciousness, if I don't exist, if I don't have my word of mouth, if I don't have a voice now, things will no longer be the same, because I'm so much needed. It's that feeling of being needed in the world. But the Christ does not operate in such a way, in such a manner. The Christ is this pure essence within us that allows life to be what it is, even when it's challenging. It allows all phases, all stages. It approaches everyone and everything with this innocence, this outlook, like, what if I don't know anything? And this is what I was told the first day when we entered this house. Like, this is how I operate. And then I actually was developing more and more of this, because I realized for the past 10 years, a part of me also built up this identity. You know, this is what I do. This work is called this and that. And I don't even want to call it Ascension Pioneers now. It's still a name, because YouTube obviously needs a name put on it. And when you have a web page, it's kind of similar. But in its essence, all I want to do is show the way towards Christ embodiment and speak about many facets of what the Christ is. It's not just one thing, because we are complex, multifaceted, multidimensional beings. And there are so many variations. And when you go and meet people, they will also exist in different variations of how they perceive life. So you would talk to them differently. You would clay yourself, like mold yourself as a clay when speaking to them, and people will say, well, that's being kind of like adjusting to the circumstance. No, but you're adjusting to the level of consciousness that it's like you're meeting and you're confronting and you're speaking to and you're holding compassion for in that state. And it's not all going to be, oh, I'm a healer, so I do things this way. When we did these Reiki sessions here with the owner of the house, and it was all very spontaneous and organic because I got a message. The person's kind of quite ill and they're not even aware of it. All they have is lots of pain, but they're quite ill. And I was just naturally called, and I did these sessions, and people exist at different levels of consciousness. Some don't know what they actually received. And, when a healer goes out to people and saying, I'm a healer, this is how much I charge, this is how it is, for me, there's different levels. There's levels of us, of course. We do need to be acknowledged and receive abundance or be even paid for things. But giving this Christ kind of healing, like allowing it to flow through you in such a godly manner, it's like it can't be put a price on it, right? So I have things that I do completely unconditionally for free because I have such respect for them and what the nature of universal law is. And all ascended masters, they lived accordingly to the law, to the principles of life and creation. So when you do, the paths and the floodgates of Christ open up. Doesn't mean physically your life will be unchallenged, will be easy breezy, easy as a peach. It just simply means that even with challenges, you will be guided through. And remember, months ago when I was lying on my couch, it was winter, and I thought I'm going to die, and I almost died 3 times. I actually conquered death. And when we speak to Jesus, he still always tells me, he says, you think you can do this and that, but always remember, you've conquered death 3 times. You won over physical death in these conditions. And then I go, oh yeah, that's right. Then why am I like this? And so what I'm trying to say here is, I was back there in that experience, just completely mind-numbingly not knowing what's next. And I was shown that I'm going to have to walk through a tunnel. And that tunnel was someday, all of a sudden there's going to be an opening, but that's simply a journey I had to walk through. And they showed me that I've chosen a more difficult path, a more difficult road, which is, I could have stayed in our old place because we didn't get all of our payment yet for selling the apartment. But we went anywhere because it's called courage. I knew it was time to go. And people would say, that's stupid. Who does such a thing? People who are only looking at things through the material eyes, that's what they see and that's how they perceive reality. But I simply trusted spirit. I threw myself off the cliff. And I've chosen a more difficult road. But at the same time, there was more nobility in that road. There was more richness of the experience of life, because if I stayed in the status quo and I was just awaiting my new and that already old squeezed in kind of mode, because you remember, right? Those of you who are with me on Patreon, you remember I was getting like more and more squeezed there. And if I just stayed in that cramp, I wouldn't grow as much as I did now through these 3 months of being shaped like a diamond and walking and meeting people. What happened to me just a few days ago, it's like in my own land, right? We go to see this place, and then we end up on this hill, and someone asked me if my name is this and that. I'm like, yeah, how do you know? And then I was thinking, oh yeah. And I never imagined people from my own country, because it's so small, right, watching my videos, and I was getting real uncomfortable. It's like, are you uncomfortable? Yeah, I am. I have to admit, because I'm a very private person. You have to know that. Most of the time I'm in the forest or in the mountains, in the hills, by the river, so people don't even, have the chance to see me. But I also go to places where there's people, because sometimes I just have to carry my energy there. So what happened was, one interesting thing, finally something was complete here, and I accepted it, and there was this beautiful weekend, and I always go for a 3-day nature retreat. So finally I'm called to go to my Italian Alps, which is the heart of the Alps for me. It's the heart of my homeland. Basically, in the Elven sense of the nature connection there, there's my home there. It's like, when I'm there, it's a complete resonance with the space. Here it's beautiful, but for me, it's not just how beautiful the nature is. It's a certain magnetic thing that I can't explain. And when I went there for 3 days, unplugging, doing the baptizing in the mountain gorge and throwing myself in the water. I actually went 3 times, right? First time just in it like this, second time the hair, and the third time just whole in. I said I want the whole baptism because I needed to wash off all of the difficulty that the road brought, because the road and traveling does bring difficulty. So if you're like this, I just don't want to go, I don't want to make change, well, you're not going to experience it. You know, a traveler, how they return home, they're full of dirt, right? And when they come home, they need to wash off. So that's how it was for me, and wash myself clean. So that was kind of like one very important breaking point. And I was there, and I received quite a lot of messages, right? And I thought, well, that's kind of like a space of completion. And I went deeper into the Christ. It's like I went so deep, I needed to integrate all the experiences. I've never went as deep, and I was just there in the silence. You know, one day I slept in my sleeping bag under the stars, and it wasn't a very warm night. And the other night I said, I'm just going to stay in the car. I'm just going to practice this feeling of not thinking, well, it's difficult, you can't do this and that. And I slept like a baby. You know, I really practiced this coming into the peace in the turbulent conditions. Or, you know, I used to be afraid of sleeping under the star. What if these animals come and this comes? And I was so peaceful. And I could see progress. And it wasn't the ultimate, but I could see progress there. And I said, wow, I can't believe it. This is my dream come true. And basically, I didn't want to be in these hills, right? But I was here, and I wasn't in my favorite spaces. I wasn't in my hammock as much as I always am, because summers here are short in the Alps. I wasn't doing the usual trips. I couldn't hike much because of my sciatica issues. You know, I couldn't do much things that I used to do before. So it was like one summer of my activities packed in 3 days. But it was enough at that time because it was so full. It was packed with pure presence. So that was kind of the breaking point. And after that, I knew time will come soon, very shortly, that it's time to go, right? So when I was there, I was shown kind of like the work that I'm doing. And before I came to that place, I stopped by the Twin Lakes. Very randomly, I didn't even know I'm going to end up there. And I stopped there, and I'm told, now you need to close the portal work here that you were doing and holding space for so many years. And I started crying. I'm like, I can't do that. Oh my God, okay, I have to do that. So I sang a song. I channeled this song. I stared at the mountain. I have this spaceship gate there. I call it like that. It was so beautiful. And I cried because many reasons, you know, one of them is also they chopped down a lot of trees, probably half. I was really sad to see that happen. And it was an ending in so many ways. And I'm just sitting there crying because the reunion had to be so short. It was just like half an hour or so. And I'm told, just close up the space. And when I sat there, this was what came to me, because I still had tremendous sadness in me. Because when I drove through past my old village where I used to live, I cried like a baby. The moment I saw my pyramid mountain, I burst into tears, right? It's still painful for me. It's always going to be partly my home. It's one of my homes here. And my heart is there, although the physical body's not, right? So it was difficult not to move in a way, because I kept going back. I kept wanting to go back, even though I was the one saying, just uproot me, goddammit, you know? And then I ended up like this, and I want to go back home, and I couldn't. I even asked the white lady who's there in these mountains, I asked for her grace to send me, to root me back. And she did. Just in a different way. But anyway, I'm there, I get the message, and all of a sudden I get these words, and these words actually grounded my experience, like truly. And the words were, because I was reminiscing of all the beautiful moments I had there, and no human ever gave me what the nature there gave me. I had a blast. I mean, I remember going with my Suzuki Vitara. I had this Jeep, and driving there, and, you know, even going to Carnic Alps in Italy alone twice. And, you know, I had these amazing trips, and it was all coming back, and I started crying and reminiscing and feeling so full of these experiences. But then I said, I can't keep them inside. I'm going to die. It's too much good, you know. It's also a feeling of being bad in a way, because it's too much good and all this memory. And I just imagined it all going to my Christed light body. And I said, this life no longer is mine. This life now belongs to the Christ. And then I just felt it leaving me, and it went into this essence formed white golden light body, which then merged with the mountain portal. And then I could see this locking experience. And then I was projecting with the pulsar technique. We're going to talk about it again in the second video update. I was just really buzzing there and pulsating there and imagining now these experiences that the Christ that I am and I represent in my own way, the deliverance that came through me in my own life was put there in the mountain. I simply said the words, now this mountain has me, has my essence, and I am this mountain and the mountain is me. And it was complete. The sadness was over. I sang a song for me. I recorded something and then I left, and then I had my retreat there in the beautiful lake region and the mountain gorges. And when I came home, I came back home here. Well, home, right? When I say home, it's very relative now. Which of your homes now? Well, all of them. This nature is my home. This area, all of these Alps, my home. It's just like different regions, right? And what happened was just before I was allowed to go to my space, I had to do healing work here. So what we had to do is I actually visited 3 waterfall areas. There's 2 waterfalls like opposing each other, and then the third trip was I had to go to the river spring here. And I was pulled then, you know, I have this this mission crystal was with me all the time. And it's the twin creation pillar, I call it, the twin pillar, the gates of the pillar. So we went there, Crystal and I simply surrendered myself to spirit. And when I did that, I was standing like this, opposing the rocks. I went right to the spring of the river. I climbed. I had to climb beyond where the water kind of drops down, right? So I had to climb because it was just pulling me, and I had to be alone. And I placed the crystal, and then I imagined the Trinity forming. So that's what they told me. The Spirit says, you need to do the triangulation work here now, because you did it there. Now you need to do it. And because you know how to do it now, and you're using the pulsar, it's going to be much faster than before you had to first master yourself, you know, through all those years. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why it's faster here. So I don't have to be years and years now, right, here in the spot. So what happened is, at the end of this activation, I imagined the 2 waterfalls opposing each other and this third river spring forming a triangle, which they actually do, like physically speaking. And in the middle now, this white ray was anchored. Around the white ray was green ray, and then around it was pink. So it was levels of anchoring this physical nature of Christ coming into motion in Christ consciousness for the physical realm. And then what usually happens for me is I start speaking the language. What Spirit told me once is the language of the ancient elementals, or the ancient elemental star language. But what happened was, this time after the activation, I was told what it actually means and what we do here. So the Elohim family of light told me that there's these primordial beings here that exist as essences. So when this place here in our lands was basically created through these 2 lakes here. There's basically a triangulation. There's a triplet energy. One is there in the Italy, right? So there's the triangulation of these lakes. And this is one of the points of creation lies here. So I was told that when humanity went to sleep, these beings, these elementals, and these ancient beings, they're not elementals, they're literally essence beings. It's like spirits of the land, right? These beings also went to sleep. And now they told me, because the earth is changing in these shifts, these beings need to wake up. So they showed me that this language that then I start to speak, it's like calling them out. So I'm waking them up, because with all this nature changes and shift and destruction as well, they need to amp up the energy. They need to do the work that why they're here, why they're called for. So my nature of the Christ is experienced, like I said, in many ways, and I don't define it. I don't say this is how it is, period. I simply know myself as the walking missionary Christ, and there's many aspects to the work that I do. Sometimes, in the wintertime, I'm not as much outdoors. I do more work with people, and I help to bring out this Christ in people. And sometimes when it's the summer, I'm always out, and the work I do is with the land and the creation points. And it's not like I don't work. It's constant work. I'm not on a holiday. It's not like a summer with feet up on the ground and that's it. I had to work a lot, and we're going to talk about that in the second video. And we're going to talk about the breakthrough of the Christ. But to get you started with this experience, right, what happened was everything needed to be complete to the final puzzle piece. And when I did the triangulation work, when they showed me what this was about, when I visited all the spots they told me to visit, and because we needed to do lots of viewing with the car, I had to take these trips with the bus, which luckily was free, but I had a limited time. So it was quite a mission. It was quite challenging, and always with the backpack and with a broken back and with my sciatica issues, it was so challenging. But one of the days I really felt empowered, and I said, you know what the heck, I'm going to the mountains. I can't take it anymore. I can't be absent from them, not even one moment. So I went there, and I merged once again with my large tree population, which are also ancient beings. Whenever I see them after a very long time, because there is no here at this spot, is more leafy kind of trees. It's even different than the area where I lived before, and it's not even that far away because it's small country, but it's still very different and distinct in terms of land and vibrancy and just a different vibration of it. So what happened, what was I trying to say about the it's like I had so much experience here. I was talking about the place, like everything, right? Everything needed to come to a certain closure. Everything needed to be complete. So only then I was allowed to basically receive what this was about, because for the first half I didn't even know what I'm doing here. I thought it was a mistake. I thought I just ended up here. It's like, it's all darkness. It's all bad. But then slowly I got to the point of understanding I need to start the mission work again, because for the first part I didn't do it. I was just very desperate, trying to find home, because when I saw it's not possible, I thought, wait a minute, maybe it's something else. And then I started doing the pulsar work, which we're going to talk about in the next video. Everything changed. And then I realized it's all so perfectly designed, and I'm the one who designed the journey. So only through being that innocent purity within us, it's like we can witness our lives as this grand masterpiece. Because if we don't have that innocence of the Christ, we get very opinionated, even as spiritual folks. As you can see, there's so much of that online. Everyone is just doing these online workshops and seminars and interviews, and they all have their own opinion over what's happening. The first things when I got here, Spirit told me, forget the collective. There is no Christ in the collective. You are the collective of Christ. So it was a different kind of collective I had to step into, right? It wasn't anymore like dealing with stuff, what's happening in the world. I said, forget it. There's a reason why we're in these remote hills. The work is much different. So you can imagine my anxiety, and like trying to pull all my hair out, as I already didn't lose enough already. And trying to figure things out. Like I just couldn't figure them out until I said, okay, And in the next video, I'm going to talk about how that came about and what I had to break through for some of you who also go through amazing experiences yourself. But like I said, don't complain, because we're each here to carry out our own Christ individuality in a certain way. So forget about this collective. Oh, we're here to do that. What about we as volunteers, groups? How many of us is here? Someone recently asked me that. Don't get entangled with that, because it's still ego, because it's trying to prevent you from going so deep within why you are here and trying to figure out, how many volunteer souls were killed off, or, taken back, or, they kind of didn't go far enough or deep enough. Yeah, that happens, but you can't think about those things. It's like, because you always have to see yourself as the only one, as the one of the one of the one, if you know what I mean. It's like it's all of the essences are already included in the one, and yet there's this individuality within us that kind of pushes life forth. And when you get this, when you really get it, you understand how it is to live your mission. And sometimes people tell me, how you're so brave, how do you do what you do? I want to be and have your wisdom. You can't, because you already have yours. You have the exact same infinite supply of wisdom, love, and power, the unified threefold flame of divine spark of God, of source, of prime light. So I work for it. I work really hard for it. That's maybe the difference between people who are very passive, or they just get very start comparing with others, or procrastinating. I'm very devoted to this. For me, right now, as you can see, the topics change a lot, and also people go away because they just don't understand. But for me now, it's all about this Christ. I don't care about the New Age. I don't care about the collective. I don't care about what people think is, we're the chosen special ones. Everyone is the one of the collective of one. Doesn't mean now on earth we get to play these games like, we're more advanced, we're this group, or these beings, we do this kind of work. It's all identification. Like I had to drop it as well. And when I dropped it myself, I still saw, because you see what you before maybe were a part of, like collective dreaming. You now see it in others. You will recognize it, you witness it, and you can choose it and say, I'm no longer a part of this. I'm just choosing to elevate myself. Doesn't mean you're like excluded, like it's separate experience. But it's like you're just going up the ladder into a more expanded field. A more expanded field of your consciousness and how it can penetrate through you. And there's a lot of stagnation still on our planet, and people not wanting to go that way and penetrate as deep. But let me tell you, if I'm able to do that, everyone can. Because even Jesus the Christ, with his own Christed example, because he had a certain specific uniqueness also to represent and demonstrate here in this world. It wasn't all about the Christ is the way he expressed it. No, there's a many of forms, as wide as the creation is, and it's infinite, right? So even he said, the things that I do now, all of you will do and more, because reality keeps on growing, expanding. That's why he said that. So the innocence of Christ is what I wanted to present also through my own experience. If you're able to see this video, it means I'm happily on the other side. I'm moved now, I'm in transit, I'm able to do the work again. But I will notify you, this is still a adaptation, right, phase for me, stage. So I'm going to need some time to settle. I'm going to see how the work progresses. Probably with Patreon, we're going to start maybe at the second half of the month in September or October, which is usually also where students go to school, right, at least where I live. So more serious work perhaps. But for now, I want to do a few collective videos to sum up the sum of all parts of my experience. There's a lot, and I know, because I try to think about all of these pieces and put them into one unified form. Sometimes it's difficult, so I forget things and maybe I shift topics. So don't hold that against me, as well as my fingers and my hands. They're dirty because I was just picking mushrooms and digging through the dirt, which I love because it's so soothing. But that's it. You know, that's what I want to talk about. Don't go into a state that you know for someone else. You know, like when I had these comments on Instagram, it's like people thinking they know more about my experience than I do. And even I didn't know, because Spirit didn't tell me for a reason. I had to first go through it. And when people do that, they're really putting themselves against the other, which means it's a separate experience. And you're trying to play a smart ass for someone and you're not. And then you're disguising it as, oh, I only want to do good and I mean well. Well, I know we all mean well, but we got to learn to really be in the presence of Christ, because it's our natural state. And that wishful thinking and being opinionated and projecting, it's not our natural state, because the innocence of Christ is. So thank you, my loves. When I managed to upload this, you know I'm safe. I'm well. When this is on your computer, it means it's all fine. But I'm still recording in the spot where I'm ending this 3 months journey. It's been a blast. It's been difficult. It's been one hell of a ride, but it's been also beautiful. So I'll talk to you again in the next video. Until then, you can find me on Patreon. I also want to thank all of the supporters who still were there, present, even though I wasn't able to do the work, physical reasons, obviously. I'm noticing a lot of people still are conditional in the way they support. I get it. We're not all Christ embodied yet. But those of you who are unconditionally always been there and supporting, thank you so much, because with your help and assistance, I managed to pull through. Isn't an easy journey physically to do the kind of work that nature doesn't pay you for, right? So thank you guys. And if you ever want to show your love by supporting, you can always find my donation page. It's right there in the tiles or thumbs or whatever. And I'll see you when I see you again very soon. I'll notify you in the next video more about the changes and the work coming. And until the next time, in the next video, stay where you are, stay safe, stay rooted, and I'll talk to you soon. With love, wisdom, and power. Bye for now.